Welcome along to another episode on the podcast Maritime Careers and Training, delivered by British Maritime Training Assessment, BMTA. And today we are looking at Anchored Away, managing life far from home. And once again, I'm super pleased to state that we have Sam Samuels along with us. Morning, Sam. How are we?
Yeah, good to be here again, Owen.
Brilliant. So today we're looking at primarily dealing with time away from home. So this goes for both shoreside and seafarers. What I would say is it's obvious with the seafarers going away from home, it's part of the job. But even for those shoreside, I think it's something that people don't expect to happen. However, with the vast majority of work for the shoreside people and those working in marinas or maintenance companies, a lot of the time, unfortunately, believe it or not, boats move. Okay, equipment goes around, and you will be in a position where you might get a call out. You might be off to Falmouth for a week. You might be off to Palma for a week. So this episode sort of helps to set the expectation of what it looks like, some of our top advice on how to sort of go about it and cope with those sort of aspects. So we'll start off with seafarers, as it comes naturally to both of us as seafarers. So life at sea is hard, isn't it, Sam?
It is. A lot of people don't realise that you're going to be putting long hours in. It's an industry which, when you're at sea, it's 24/7. Not like at home where we go to bed at 11 o'clock at night and we wake up in the morning. Everything's still ticking over. When you're at sea, certainly doesn't matter whether you be an engineer, whether you be a decky, even the chef. 3 meals a day, 4 meals a day have got to be put out. The vessel has got to be cleaned. So everybody is involved with it. So it's just busy 24/7. And I think sometimes people don't appreciate that. People just imagine the world closes down at 11 o'clock at night or at 5 o'clock in the evening when everyone goes home.
Yeah. And I think in terms of that, dealing with those aspects away from home, I think if you're fortunate enough to have internet on board, again, do your research, make sure you know what the vessel is like before you go. If you do have internet on board, I think a real key aspect of managing is once you know where you are, what your setting is, what your rotations are, put some fixed time in for yourself on board. So have a time, 20, 30 minutes a day, exercise. That's going to be a key one. It's good for the endorphins. It's good for the relaxation. Time to call and message your partners, your loved ones, set expectations, even do a rotation of who you're going to contact when, if you have the opportunity to. Find your safe space on board. I know we've spoken to another episode, but even that, grabbing a cup of tea and looking out of the back end of the vessel as the sun rises or sun sets, again, key aspects of managing life away from home.
Yeah, we used to joke that we'd take the dog for a walk in an evening. After an evening meal, people would go and stand on the upper deck if you're allowed to. But also, you've got to find a hobby that's going to keep you amused as well. We tend to rely on our electronic devices. A lot of people like the hardback books. There are libraries on board sometimes. It's not going to be the same as living at home. You are going to be without some of the key facilities, but that safe space and that safe time for you where you can actually switch off and unwind is invaluable.
Yeah, and if you can set your expectations quite early, where you're going to say, I'm going to have half an hour or an hour of comms with them and keep to that, it will help moderate that separation anxiety, that separation. If you're constantly stretching it or pushing it and then going to the limits, it will get more difficult. I think the other thing really to understand is most people, the vast majority on board the vessels, they're in exactly the same position as you. And actually, buddying up with someone or finding someone you get on well with, it's going to really help.
Yeah, talking to people is the key to it. And as I said, everybody thinks they're on their own. Everybody thinks their own personal situations are unique. But when you start talking to people, yeah, you don't have to share your life story, but you realise that, someone's got kids or you're in a new relationship, that your partner is struggling, that you can share ideas and you can sort of comfort each other in a weird sense, just to make sure that you don't feel that you're the only person going through the issues.
Yeah, I remember a couple of different types of ships I was on. So on the Ro-Ro ferries, they were particularly quite difficult because there was skeleton-based crew. We were doing 6 on, 6 off at the time, and you were on watch with maybe one other. Then you'd come off watch, go to bed, have dinner on your own. Then you're back on again on your own, and you're back off again on your own. Blah blah blah. Whereas opposed to when I was on Ardmore Centurion, chemical tanker, you'd go to the mess every break. You'd spend your evenings in the mess with everyone else, playing games, collaborating. It might have even been watching movies or whatever and having a chat. And again, the camaraderie on board that vessel was fantastic. There was a real pull yourselves together, support each other, and especially some of the other crew on there, the Filipinos on board, they were doing 9-month contracts.
Yeah, a lot of vessels recognise the fact that you've got to put extra things in, even as simple as, although we've all got access to films and movies, sometimes a simple thing like a movie night where everybody sits down and watches the same movie. You may have seen it 100 times. It doesn't matter. You just get that environment where people gather round and you can make a bit of a fun evening. My world was slightly different. I always had lots of crew around me. Sometimes finding the quiet space was harder than meeting up with people. But it's a balance. You've got to get that balance between what you want and what other people need of you.
Yeah, I'm finding common grounds as well. So a lot of the time, I know it's not everyone's cup of tea, but football tends to be an international language, music, films, and again, finding those aspects, again, it can help pass the time. It can help settle the anxiety, the nerves, and having those things to talk to. Don't just isolate yourself. Even to the point as an engineer officer of the watch myself, I used to go up to bridge. Go up to bridge, find out what they're doing, have a chat with them because they are probably more than likely in the same boat as you are.
Yeah, and it's good to get an idea. Not only do you see it in action, but you also learn things that's going on, and that's often the case. And it adds to your work once you understand the responsibility that goes on in other people's departments. Then it's quite good. And on the second note to that, I used to go in the galley because sometimes they were happy for someone just to come and peel some spuds or whatever, or even just have a chat to them. Because again, it's the hardest job in the world working in a galley on a vessel. Everybody will complain about the food at some point.
Yeah, and that's managing that life far from home, especially in the early doors. It's interesting, isn't it? Because you see some people and other who are at sea for 5, 6, 10 years. I think the average sort of time at sea now for seafarers is 10 to 12 years. But then I've seen people who come shoreside and then within a month or two, they're back again because actually they can't deal with being back home and that lifestyle change. So you do see both avenues, don't you?
Yeah, people get used to a certain routine. They like it. In fact, it provides a sense of security for them. And in a weird way, sometimes you run away from the problems at home. You don't have to think about the bills. You don't have to think about getting children to school. And to be perfectly blunt, when mine lad was a lot younger, going to sea was probably the easier option than having to deal with the day-to-day running of getting him up in the morning, getting to school, and all the things that go on in life. Yes, it was a concern, but at least I had an excuse and I was working and I was focused on other things.
Yeah, so it can be tough, but as you sort of said, it's setting yourself some boundaries, how you manage your day. Certainly, exercise is a huge one. If you don't, you do get into a bit of a slog, a little bit of a rut, and getting away from that. So coming shoreside then, because again, as we sort of mentioned, it's an obvious part of the job with the seafarers, but in terms of shoreside going away from home can happen. Now, on some jobs, shore-based, it is quite obviously advertised. It will say large amounts of travel. It might say 50% working away from home. But until you start doing it, again, it's a little bit different. I think we've both been in this position. When I was at Ocean Yacht Systems at the time, I'd been over to Palma, Denmark, Barcelona. When I moved to Breathe Safety, I'd been to Iran, Mauritania, out in Africa, some weird and wonderful places. But again, it's a whole different sense of feeling when you know you've taken on a job that normally is predominantly home life, and then you go away. Even myself and you, Sam, we were in Greece last year for a week.
Yeah, and I think the problem is people see you going away, especially loved ones, when you're shore based. They imagine you're going to be around every day, and then they see you shooting off. They think you're off on holiday again because you're leaving the country, but it's not as glam as it looks. You know, it's quite lonely walking into a hotel room. It's quite lonely trying to go and find food or eating on your own. It's certainly challenging when you're having to travel around the world, when you're going to have to go to different places, and you're going to be working hard, you're going to be tired, you're going to be up a deadline. So yeah, I think people often look at it. The traveling salesman is probably the greatest one. People go, "Oh, it's fantastic! You travel all around the country." And yet you're in a different hotel every night. You're constantly living out of a bag. You're not eating your home food. And although it's nice to eat out, you don't have the pressure. Again, you start to pile on the pounds. Do you have a gym? Do you have the home comforts? And all of these things, they look great, and we look forward to, and we get excited. But the grass isn't always greener.
Yeah, and there's a couple of sort of examples. I'd been out to Denmark on a job. We were going out to set up and take the testing results on a hydraulic thruster system, a swing thruster system that we'd installed on the vessel. And when we got there, we were racing for our connection. Managed to get our connection from Amsterdam to Denmark. Brilliant. Yeah, our bags didn't make it. So then all of a sudden, not only are you stuck there for what was supposed to be 2-3 days, you've then extended the trip because the luggage isn't there. So you're then waiting for your luggage to do a 2-day job, which has now become a week. And that was even worse. All of a sudden, we're sat around, and it sounds nice, but all we could do was sit around and drink coffee.
Exactly. And when you get back from somewhere, you'll guarantee that the flight won't be at a sociable time, when you'll be walking through the door at 1-2 o'clock in the morning. And then it's even harder because people are not so excited to see you. And you think, well, I've done all this work, and yet all they want to do is go back to sleep, which is understandable.
Yeah.
But yeah, it looks great. It looks glam. But there are downsides to it.
Yeah. And on the flip side of that, in terms of when I've been out to Palma and done some installation works like that they've been brilliant periods. Because again, if you can find people, and again, you've got to always consider you are representing your employer. I think that's really key to sort of say.
Yeah.
However, a lot of the locals will take you under their wing. And if you're going to be one of those people who just wants to go back to their room and call your missus all night sort of thing, there's a place for it, but you will struggle. So again, being sociable, going out and exploring a little bit, buddying up with potential clients, and again, it could build up your networking, it can build up your reputation in a positive way as long as you handle it right way. So in Palma, we always made a good effort to go out, meet the locals. Even, we were given allowance of X amount of money for the day. I think it was something like £50 for a day for breakfast, lunch and dinner. Well, where you spent that money was up to you. Now, I won't encourage everyone to go and save it for a liquid meal as such. But again, it was a balancing act, and you could really enjoy your time there rather than just sitting in your room.
Yeah, and there's a balance, because if you're posting stuff on social media, because you're out enjoying life with the locals, they're entertaining you, and then the next minute you're phoning home, telling loved ones back home that you're really busy, and they look at your social media, and there you are at a barbecue, or you're partying late into the early hours. It sends the wrong message. So again, like you say, you are working for the company. Socializing is important, but make sure those back home actually understand why you're socializing and how you're socializing. Otherwise, they see it that you're, again, away on a jolly. They're dealing with day-to-day existence at home, and yet you're partying on down, having a great time.
Yeah, and the flip side of this is obviously sometimes you go to places that you're not so comfortable in. I know I've been flown out to Nouakchott in Mauritania. I've been to Iran. So Nouakchott, we went out to install and commission a compressed air system for breathing apparatus for the firefighting team. Sounds brilliant going to a gold mine. Absolutely fantastic. Yeah, until you realise that you've just landed with on a plane that's only got 10 people on it, on a runway that's just sand, and then as you're walking around the gold mine, they're saying, that's a terrorist group, there's a terrorist group, there's a terrorist group. And again, all of a sudden you don't have internet, don't have TV. But again, just speak to the locals that are there, because a lot of them, they are so friendly. They are
Yeah.
so good. And they were brilliant. They took me under their wing. We played a lot of football out there. But again, I tell you what, I've never been more nervous in my life than getting off a plane in the wax shop with people with rifles and guns there for security and being told, we've got to look after you because, there are people out there who will kidnap you.
Yeah. And also do a little bit of research if you're going to certain places, understand a little bit about their culture. It doesn't go amiss if you understand and respectful, especially in some countries where they have their weekends are different to ours. And again, you'll actually understand the working patterns that you'll probably have to adopt out there.
Yeah, and trust me, not everyone's going to go to no actual every day. So I know that's a bit of an extreme sort of example, but it just shows you what's going on. People do go all over the country, all over the world, for work. And I think researching where you're going is a really key bit as well, and understanding what you can and can't do. And therefore, that will give you less anxiety. It'll make you feel more comfortable about where you're going and why, and the aspects that you want to do. And again, even if it's down to something like you're going down to Falmouth for a week to do a overhaul, something like PB Asher, I know do bits and bobs like that, where they go down and do engine overhauls, Finnings, for example, Caterpillar. Understanding what to do and when to do it is a key bit. And as you said, giving a allocated time to speak to family and friends while you're on these trips is a vital part as well.
Yeah, you've got to make sure that they realise that you aren't just out there having a party. I think as soon as you say you're going away, everybody imagines, well, like when we went to Athens, I'm sure that my other half thought that you and I were going off on holiday and having a party. And the reality of it was, yes, we did do an awful lot of work, but even in the evening when we were sitting down having a beer, we were still discussing work, we were trying things out. And trying to share that with other people back home is a little bit difficult. But again, both you and I found time to make sure that we phoned home. You could speak to your little one. And so it's about being grown up. It's about being sensible and trying to understand the other person's point of view as well.
Yeah, and I think that's another key bit is obviously when you are working away from home, it can become quite easy to fall into the trap of everything is just work, 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 work. I've seen it where people finish at 5, they go back to their room, they're working till 9, 10 o'clock on their laptop, then they go again, then they go again. And by the time they get to the end of the week and they get home and they're finally back with their family, they're useless anyway.
Yeah. And the other thing, just to bear this in mind, which can be very frustrating, is laundry. If you turn up after a week and just open your suitcase and throw your laundry on the floor, expecting it to be recycled and made ready for the next week, that can often be an angst. So again, if you've got a facility where laundry is available, then use it. Make the company pay for it. You're there for a reason, and you may have a short turnaround, and it's not fair to expect either people at home to do it or even you to give up your time to sort out all of that laundry while you've been away.
Yeah. And I think the other thing to be aware of is when, managing life far from home, and some companies, just make sure you're aware of what you're getting into, because some companies will work off call outs. Okay. So you could get a 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning call where you do have to go out somewhere, come into work to do a repair or produce some gears that need to be sent out. So again, setting the expectation with your loved ones and family that's the role you're in and that's what the job entails is going to go a long way, because when that happens for the first time where they call you up and they say, right, I need you to go out to Barcelona tomorrow, and I've been there, you have to be ready. The instance with mine was confined space entry equipment out in Barcelona, and ultimately they do expect you to go out. They are losing thousands and hundreds of thousands of pounds per day because the equipment's not working, and they will expect you to go out there and fix it rapidly. So again, having that awareness of short turnarounds is going to be vital.
Yeah. And also bear in mind, it's hard as well, but if you've got family back home and if the significant other who's looking after children and what have you is ill, then you're going to have to make some very rapid decisions, whether A, you leave and go, or whether you phone the company up and say, regrettably, I can't do this. Now, most companies will be understanding, but some companies, if they booked your flight, etc., in the last minute, you phone up and say, I'm afraid to say I can't go because I have a problem back home. They will drill down to it, and they don't take kindly. So you'll be put under pressure from both ends, looking after those at home, but also servicing the company's needs.
Yeah, and again, you have to be aware that if you're working away from home, you are going to miss stuff. So going back to that Barcelona trip, I was sent away on the 24th of April. My birthday's the 25th. So I was sat there the very next day. I've had a really long day. I left at 5 in the morning, got to the oil refinery. They hadn't put the paperwork in for me to get on site. So I spent about 13 hours sat in a car park doing work, trying to get on site, to be told I couldn't. The very next day, I finally got on site, spent all day in an oil refinery trying to fix the equipment that had been broken, to find out that it wasn't a manufacturing fault, it was a user error. And then I remember sat there, it was about 9 o'clock at night on my phone, just thinking, oh, happy birthday to me. And the highlight of the whole day was meeting my wife on Tinder. Can you believe that? Tinder. And I remember saying to her, oh, I'm away right now. How about, it's my birthday today, how about we go out on a date on Friday? And she said, oh, that is the cheapest trick in the book, right? Blaming it on my birthday. And I remember getting back on that Friday. I was looking forward to it. Got back, showed her my ID, and she went, all right, smart ass. And that was it. We're married and a kid now. So there are good things that happen when you go away. I'm not sure everyone's going to meet their wife while stuck in a hotel in Barcelona. But again, balancing it and, having that I could have sat there. I could have, moped around on my birthday. But instead, you get on with it and you keep going, and better days are going to come, even in those dark patches.
Yeah. And it's not for everybody. You have to know the type of person you are.
Yeah, and I think that's a key thing. A lot of the jobs will come with international travel, particularly in the marine industry. It is there. There are locations where you might just be in a boatyard fabricating. You might be installations, renewals, servicing, but there are other aspects, especially if you're in warranty teams. Okay, so the Sunseeker warranty teams, for example. Yeah, brilliant warranty team, get to travel all over the world, but spare a thought for them, because at times it ain't great, and they might be missing out on stuff, and you might be sat there thinking they have the best time in the world, but actually don't. So actually, I think there's a big part to say here, that not only do you have to be aware of what you're getting into if you're doing travel, but let's flip this on its head. Actually, I think we do have to have a little bit more understanding of those who travel when you stay at home, and actually appreciate what they're doing and understand what they might be going through and support them from home.
Yeah, and I think if you reverse what our situation, and we were sat at home, we would be looking at things. We want communication, we want knowledge, we want to understand what they're doing. We want to have some picture in our mind of what they're going to be doing while they're away, because it relies an awful lot on trust. It relies on the fact that when you're away, people want to know exactly where you are, what you're doing. So sitting at home waiting for somebody, it must be very hard. And so if you can take your experiences of having been away and reverse it, I think you would make a far better stay-at-home person, because you would actually understand the situation. But it's communication. It's communication. It's painting the picture, and it's understanding on both parties and sitting down and explaining exactly what it is you do.
Yeah, and if you are listening to this episode and you know that your partner or your son or daughter is going off to sea, if we flip it from that point of view, I think you do need to set your expectations. You can support an awful lot, by reassuring them, by not pestering them all the time. I know it's hard, and it is hard, but setting clear boundaries for yourself, checking in regularly, but at agreed times, making them feel wanted, making them feel that they're being thought of, that they're not missing out on stuff. I think that goes a long way of supporting from home. as well as being at sea or being away and being the actual person. I think there's a big message to be sent there that actually you can be awfully supportive if you're not the one traveling.
Yeah, and remember that when people do come back, having been travelling, they're not necessarily wanting to dash round and see everybody in the family. They do need some time to put their feet up and recharge. Hard though it is when you've been sat at home all the time and you're waiting to see. Certainly, if it's your children, waiting to see your children turn up. But you just have to understand and believe that they do want to see you, but they also want to recharge their batteries. And maybe between the pair of you, by having open conversation again, you can find a middle ground and find a time that suits everybody.
Yeah, I think that's a really key bit. So we've sort of covered seafarers going away. Again, bit more obvious in terms of the fact that there is international travel and working away from home. But again, those key points: exercise, agreed forms of communication, finding time for yourself and not isolating yourself, really key messages. For those who are shore based but with travel, again, be careful on social media. Don't just plaster that you're having the world's best time. But at the same time, don't isolate yourself and stay in your room. Again, it's quite difficult if you're doing international travel on your own and you're going away at home. It can be quite daunting and isolated. Make sure that you do agree pockets of time to speak to your loved ones and ascertain what you're doing. And a message from all of them is make sure you know where you're going, what you're allowed to do when you've gone to those places, what's accepted, what's not accepted, because again, you can get yourself into quite a sticky situation if you're not up to scratch with the knowledge of the area.
And just as a side note, if you've been a seafarer, you're used to going away, you like the change. It's part of one of the things I discovered, that although I was on different ships, so my job role changed every 4 years or so. And I like the variety, I like the challenge. And in many respects, if you get into a relationship and you choose to do a shore role which involves traveling, it's probably because you like the challenge, you like the change. And if you don't express that and tell somebody the type of person you are, they may misinterpret it. They may think that you're just a selfish individual, but sometimes it's what makes us tick. It's what keeps us alive, having that variety. So again, it's got to be explained. It's got to be understood by everybody.
Yeah, so that draws this episode to a close. So I hope that's been informative and useful for you. If you do have any questions about managing life far from home, or if there's any sort of topic you want to be covered or an episode on, please do email info@bmta.net. And for anyone who's listening who wishes to donate a small amount of money to our Charity of the Year, as always, please visit the Charity of the Year on the bottom of the podcast page on our website and donate anything you can afford. And that just leaves us to say thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.